Endurance Junkie Podcast, episode 74. Hey Junkie, thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie Podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Ben Kanute is an Olympic triathlete from the US who competed at the Rio 2016 Games. Ben has been a high-level triathlete since childhood, dedicating himself to the sport's three disciplines since he was 8 years old. He made his 70.3 debut earlier this year and impressed the world when he grabbed the silver medal at the recent Ironman 70.3 World Champs in Chattanooga. Hi Ben, thanks for coming on the show today. Can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your sporting background growing up, and how you ended up in triathlon?
Yeah, of course. I started off just like any other kid playing soccer, baseball, going to computer classes, all that good stuff. But I started swimming when I was about 7 or 8 years old, just on a local swim team. And a couple years later was able to do my first kids triathlon that some local parents helped organize at our local health and wellness center. And really what helped me kick off into my triathlon career was to go and join the Multisport Madness Kids Triathlon team, which started up a couple years after my first triathlon. So I was about 10 or 11 at that age. And then from there, it just kind of escalated where I started racing youth elite and junior elite and won a few national titles and started racing on the world stage.
Now I guess it's a pretty typical upbringing for guys who are racing the ITU circuit. I think, when triathlon first started, everybody was coming from either a swimming background or a running background or a cycling background. And then these guys helped maybe to define the sport. The guys who are racing ITU now, they're all, they brought up with these Iron kids and these, short triathlons as youngsters and really evolved into adulthood just purely racing triathlon.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Like, it's becoming more and more common. And I think the big challenge so far for the U.S. has been just holding on to some of these guys through college, because it just helps so much with experience to be able to do triathlon from a young age and continue that up to the professional ranks.
Yeah. So what allowed you to actually make that step after college and become a professional and go race the ITU circuit?
Right. So I actually had my first opportunity to race professionally after my freshman year in college. I'd gotten third at the Collegiate National Champs, and that qualified me for the pro card, but I wasn't going to just take it right away. I was going to still stay as an age grouper, not really rush into it. But USAT offered me the opportunity to go and race in Europe for a month over the summer and to get some experience and just really learn what it took to be a professional at the level. And that was huge in setting the bar for me and kind of figuring out what it took to be a professional in triathlon for that next step. So I learned a lot that trip.
Yeah. So where did you go there? Was that France or something? Did you compete in the
Right. Well, we started off in London at the Canary Wharf Triathlon. That was a unique event with some super sprint racing thrown in. And then, it's four races in 4 weekends. So I went from Canary Wharf to Holton to I ended up at the end of the Tijuvaros World Cup, and then it was Geneva, Switzerland Continental Cup. And in between, we were training in Spain. So it was to kind of introduce us to the next level of racing in Europe.
Yeah. Is it different racing in Europe than the US?
Oh, for sure. I mean, as a junior, you race against the same guys for years and years. On the draft legal circuit, you kind of race against mainly U.S. guys. And I mean, I think triathlon is becoming more and more international where people are coming to the U.S., but just racing like U.S. Continental Cups and Continental Cups in America, in the Americas, are just not as deep. The guys in Europe are, they're like bike racers. They race every weekend and they race hard every weekend. And, as somebody who hadn't really raced at a major professional level before, it was pretty eye-opening to see all of these guys just really throwing down. And I saw a lot of the same guys each place that I went, just really throwing down and going hard each and every weekend.
Yeah. So how did you do at these races?
I had a little bit of success at the beginning when I first started. Like Canary Wharf, I made the finals, and because it was a prelim final event. In Holton, I believe, I'm having a hard time remembering that result, but I think it was my first Olympic distance, so I might have struggled through that one a bit. And then same with Tizzy was a World Cup, so that's always fairly difficult. But I think I finished off the block with top 5 at that World Cup or the Continental Cup in Geneva, Switzerland. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so you definitely got back home with a lot of new experiences and some confidence that you could make it to the higher level and compete at World Cup stage and maybe go to the Olympics.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Olympics were such a distant thought. Like, it was something that I wanted to do, but at that time, I think that trip kind of had me come back home and take a look at where I was in my collegiate career and athletic career, and ask the question of what would it take to go in 2016. And when it came down to it, it meant graduating a year early from college and just making a steady progression in my athletics and in my point standings there. So it took a bit of math and some planning, but yeah, that trip really did help catapult me into my quest for the Olympics. But I wouldn't say that it was like a major possibility for me at that point. I still had quite a long ways to go.
Yeah, but in the end, you did make it to the Olympics, right?
Yes, I did.
Was that like
that was?
Yeah, did you have to work for it, or was it pretty easy and just following your natural progression? And is that the way that you got there, or was it? Did you need a bit more? A little bit extra.
Yeah, it was definitely a hard journey. It wasn't easy by any measures. I mean, after I graduated in 2014, I went and lived in Santa Fe for a year with my coach at the time, and really put in just a ton of training. But once the test event came around, which was the first qualifier, I didn't race well at all. It was one of the worst races in my career, which was kind of confusing to me because I was so fit and I felt like I was ready to go. And it was pretty disappointing, but I was able to get myself back in it, get myself back training in a positive way. And that was when I raced well at the grand final in my hometown in Chicago, and got in a breakaway there and scored myself a top 20, I believe, or just outside, somewhere right around there. And that's what put me back in the game for qualifying, because then it brought me to Yokohama, which was the final qualifying race, and I had to run my way onto the team, which is something that I don't think anybody thought I could do, as my strength usually lies in the bike and the run. So that was, I think I like to say that race there and the whole journey of how I qualified, to me, was the most satisfying part of going to the Olympics, because it was done in a way that not many people expected I would do it.
More satisfying than the games themselves?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. The games were good, and I performed to kind of what I wanted to. I still, the result was still a little bit off, but I mean, I raced how everybody kind of expected me to race, where I came out of the swim toward the front, I mixed it up on the bike, and then I just kind of limped home on the run a bit. But in Yokohama, I kind of sat back and waited for the run, which is something that I don't think anybody was really expecting. And I was able to beat out quite a few other guys on the U.S. team who are definitely some of the better runners, not just in the country, but in the world.
Yeah. Was that at the beginning of the Olympics or at the end of the Olympics? I can't remember.
Yokohama?
No, the Rio race. Was that at the beginning of the Olympics or towards?
It was towards the end. So we didn't even go down until about a week before the race. So we missed the opening ceremonies and and some of that other time. So, but yeah, it was an amazing experience overall. Like, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I think the most satisfying part for me was just actually qualifying, because that was the biggest and probably hardest part to get there.
Okay. And then this year came around. I think it was all about mostly ITU racing again. But you also ventured into 70.3 territory. What made you decide to go that little bit longer?
Right. Well, after the Olympics, I wanted to take a step back and take this year to really explore triathlon a little bit, I guess, where I wanted to try out all the different styles of racing and do some of the things that I wanted to do. So it was definitely an interesting year, mixing it up, doing races like Alcatraz and the Philadelphia Triathlon, like Olympic distance non-draft, and doing races like Major League Triathlon and Super League, where there's super sprints, and then also kind of testing out the half Ironman distance, where that's like completely the opposite of the super sprint. So I just wanted to really experiment and see what I liked best about the sport, and had a fun time trying out all the different formats and planning out my season.
Yeah. And what's the result of that year? What do you like best?
I mean, it was I've kind of found out I like mixing it up a lot. Like, I think next year you'll see me do a few half Ironman, and you'll also see me still doing a lot of the super sprint stuff. And I think those two extremes are what I race the best in this year. So I think over the next year or two, I'll kind of have to tweak a few things in my training to really kind of maximize the sprint and Olympic distance. But it was kind of interesting to see that I raced really well at the super sprint and the half Ironman this year.
Yeah, it is pretty odd, that you can do those two complete opposites and still do well. It's only good for the future, I guess. Talk a bit about that World Cup race there. I mean, that World Championship race in Chattanooga. I think you came out of the water in the front and you led the bike, even out on the run. Did you surprise yourself there, or was that part of the game plan?
Right. I like to say that this race was pretty much perfect. I'm reluctant to say it was absolutely perfect, just because I wasn't standing on the top of the podium, but not much more could have gone right for me in this race. I had a plan, which was to push the swim and to just ride kind of within myself on the bike, and maybe push the first part just a little bit and reassess like where everybody was at the top of the hill about 8 to 10 miles into the race. And it just so happened that this scenario that played out is that nobody was with me. So I just kind of settled in to the watts that I knew I was capable of holding, and ended up getting a much bigger gap than I had ever planned or hoped for. Because the big thing me and my coach were talking about was I could be at the top of this hill with like by myself, or I could be with 10 other guys, and it'd be all about what decisions I made in those next however many miles left, the next 40 miles, that could really play to my advantage or really hurt me. So it was going to take a lot of just kind of checking it out and seeing how the race goes. And I like to think that I'm fairly good at reading a race and being able to kind of make the correct decisions while I'm out there.
Yeah. Did you ever think, I've got this covered, this is mine?
Well, I thought as I was getting off the bike with a 4-minute lead, I was kind of telling myself, don't blow it, because a 4-minute lead is a pretty awesome lead to have off the bike in any sort of racing. So I never thought that I was going to take it outright. I knew it was going to be a battle, because it's hard to bet against Javier Gomez, who has an amazing run pedigree, and I knew he was very capable of running a 110 to 112, and I knew I was capable of running 114 to 116. So on on the absolutely perfect day, I would have ran 1:15 and he would have ran 1:12 or something like that, and we might be having just a slightly different conversation. But still, I was super happy with the race, and I felt like I performed exactly how we had planned it. So that made me really happy.
Did that somehow change your perspective towards sponsors and stuff like that?
I mean, a little bit. There's definitely some more interest coming my way after the race, but at the same time with sponsors and everything, I'm actually treated very well even before this with a few of them, with how they respect me as an athlete and support me. And that's really what I look for is a product that I am more than happy to endorse, that I would use regardless if I was if they were paying me or not. And then also just like that they respect me as an athlete, and they're happy and they believe in me. And I feel like I've been pretty lucky in my career to be able to find that kind of right off the bat.
Okay. You already touched on the subject a little bit before. Next year that you're gonna mix things up. You're gonna do some 70.3 races. You're gonna do some shorter course races as well. You also have a pretty neat track record in the mixed relay competition. I think being world champion in 2016, and then grabbing second this year, if I'm correct.
Yes.
That's gonna be part of the Olympics in Tokyo 2020, right?
Yes, it is.
Is that going to be the focus for you for the next couple of years?
It's definitely going to be high up there on the focus. Like I think that the U.S. has a very unique opportunity and a very good shot at a medal. So I'd love to be able to race the mixed team relay in Tokyo. I think it's one of the coolest events out there, and so I'm going to keep trying to go after that and keep trying to improve in the super sprints, because I just love that style of racing. I think it's fast and furious, and it's exciting for the athletes and the spectators. So it's definitely something that has caught my eye.
Is there some kind of special support coming from USA Triathlon to support that project, or is it just coming out of you guys as athletes?
USAT does a terrific job at supporting the athletes as a whole, and I know now they're working very hard to figure out how best to approach all of this and maximize our medal chances for Tokyo, for the individual race as well as for the relay. So it's all kind of new territory for the athletes and the governing bodies. So we'll have to kind of sit back and wait and see until they release all their criteria and that sort of thing in the coming months. I think we might still be waiting on the ITU a little bit to release some of their rules and regulations concerning the mixed team relay. So with it being a new event, I think there's a lot of unknowns kind of going into it. But so far I've been fairly encouraged with how USAT has handled us and support.
Right, excellent. So you've been at it for quite a while now, since you were a pretty young kid. What do you see as your biggest achievement in your career so far, and what's your biggest disappointment?
Ooh, yeah, that's a hard one. There are so many ups and downs that it can be hard to pick just one. I'd say it's really hard to not mention the Olympics. Like I think that with the way that I did it, I am very proud of how I did that and how I ran my way onto the team instead of maybe swimming or biking my way. So I thought that was I'm pretty proud of that, and I thought it was pretty cool. And the biggest disappointment might have to go along with the Olympics a little bit, where the Rio test event that year before, I just had one of my worst races ever, and wasn't necessarily didn't at the time really know what had gone wrong. So I'd say that was one of the points in my career where I was really scratching my head and wondering what was going on.
Yeah, okay. What's the greatest piece of advice you've ever received in the sport so far? I
think I think it's kind of twofold. Man, actually, I feel like I could give a lot, because I mean, my career has been up and down. I've had some really high highs and some really low lows, and maybe not all of that is noticeable just looking at it on a piece of paper or watching my social media. But I think the reason where I've gotten where I am is that I work very hard, and I would say that that's some advice that I'd give to somebody who's just starting out or has aspirations to be a professional. Like I don't feel like I was born with a bunch of talent in the sport of triathlon, but I loved it and I worked hard at it, and that's how I got to where I am. And then the other is to just stick with it. So it's never just going to come easy, and you have to stick with it for a little while before you see some of the rewards.
Yeah. And what motivates you to go out, every day and hurt yourself? Because these ITU training sessions, they bloody hurt.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just I want to be my best self. I want to be the best triathlete that I can be, and I know that everybody who I race against is out there working just as hard as I am, and I'd like to work harder than them, and I like to. It's fun to race, and it's fun to do well in races. So kind of a combination of all of that, as well as just liking to be outside and working hard, and maybe there's even some sort of sick satisfaction I get from suffering a little bit as well. But I love the sport and I love competing, and I think that's one of the big things that has me going out there every day and giving it my all.
Yeah. Do you feel you have to make some sacrifices to live the life you do, compared to us normal people? If I can call ours.
Yeah, for sure. I've had to say no to a lot of different things. I've said no to friends' weddings, to going out to parties, to all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, like I like to have balance in my life, and I still like to hang out with friends and grab a drink every now and then. But even with any of the sacrifices that I make, I feel like I gain back so much too by being able to race triathlon for a living. And by no means would ever complain that that being a triathlete is so hard and I have to make so many sacrifices, because I think it's just a little bit a part of the job description where you give a little, but the sport gives back so much more than it takes.
Yeah. And is it sort of party time now for a couple of weeks off season, or do you have anything planned for the rest of the year?
Not quite party season just yet. I have one more race coming up in the middle of November, the Island House Triathlon.
Oh, okay.
So I will race that, and then it's a bit of vacation time. So I'll stay in the Bahamas for a little while and recharge a little bit before coming back to the States.
I think it's going to be a pretty dirty party there after that race.
I'm sure. I've heard some stories after Island House and stuff. So it seems like a fun race, and it's one of the ones that I've had circled on my calendar for a little while and wanted to get out to. So I'm really excited to be out there.
All right, cool. Well, good luck with that, and good luck with 2018, and hopefully we'll see you grab a medal in Tokyo in 2020, and
awesome.
And on a multiple 70.3 podiums as well, I guess. Is Ironman ever on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I'm more of a strength athlete than anything else, and I think Ironman is probably up my alley, but I'm in no rush to get there. Let's just say that I think I've got plenty of time and plenty of speed left in the legs. So I'd like to try and make sure I utilize that completely before moving up to that long of a distance.
Makes sense. All right. Thanks for your time, Ben. How can people get in touch with you if they want to?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Twitter and Instagram is just my name, Ben Kanute, is my handle. And then Facebook, I believe it's Ben Kanute, Professional Triathlete. And I think reach out to me on there. You can send me a direct message, whatever you like.
All right, cool. I'll put those links up on the show notes page. Feel free to give some love to your sponsors and partners.
Oh yeah, definitely couldn't do it without Hoka, Trek, Tier, and the New York Athletic Club, among a few other people like Stride and Arbar and First Endurance. All those people helped me be able to get to races and perform my best. And I guess another shout out to USA Triathlon, who was kind of the people who helped jumpstart my career as a professional.
No, perfect. I'll put those links up as well. Anything else you want to plug?
No, I think we covered just about all of it, but yeah, thanks for just having me on the show. That's great.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming on. One last to finish. We finish the interview and you step outside of the house and you find a lottery ticket that ends up winning $10 million. What do you do?
Oh man. I always say I'd probably end up in some sort of like high-end grocery store and I'd end up buying all of that sort of stuff. So that might not put a huge dent in it, but I would I would go crazy at a grocery store first, like whatever above Whole Foods is, like the super high, like fun organic stuff. I think I'd probably start there and start classing up my pantry a bit and move on from there. Yeah. Maybe buy a huge house.
A huge house, okay, that's good. Because the food's not going to make a big dent, that's for sure.
No, you'd be surprised though. Some of that stuff, it's like that peanut butter can cost $30 if you go to the right spot.
Okay, that's a bit exaggerated. Okay, thanks for your time, Ben. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Cheers, man. Alright, Junkie, thanks for listening to this episode with Ben Kanute. I hope you enjoyed that one. Now, as usual, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future episodes, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and subscribe to the show. And while you're at it, I would appreciate a rating and review as well. That will help grow the show. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time. Cheers.